Hey y'all, glad you enjoyed it. Let's get right into the questions. Dane asks, is that a Whataburger cup, a styrofoam container from the establishment, or a metal container that you have? So it's a metal one. It's one of the Yeti ones. It's really good. I fill it up in the morning and it still has ice by night. But yeah, it's the metal one because we don't use styrofoam. We should be trying to use less plastic and less one-time use materials. So yeah, the metal one. I asked my mom for spicy ketchup and she brought me that instead, but that works. Mark asks, what stuff do you use to climb high hikes like the one you climbed? So that one wasn't like steep enough that it required like climbing equipment. Whenever we're on steeper cliffs though, we'll have proper climbing equipment to, tying on ropes, grappling equipment, abseiling equipment, that sort of thing. Abseiling is it's kind of like rappelling whenever you're going down a cliff and you're using ropes. Braden Drake asks, do you study dinosaurs? If so, tell us about them in the next video. No, I don't study dinosaurs. I'm not a paleontologist. Sometimes the fossil penguins are kind of pertinent to what I'm working on, and I'll probably put a picture of me with some of the fossil penguins right there, because they used to be huge. Penguins used to be some penguins used to be way bigger. Not quite dinosaur times, but millions of years ago. I think 60 million years ago is when penguins first appeared on Earth, and there were some big ones back then, so hopefully a picture there. Cameron Phillips asks, what advice would you have for someone who wants to pursue a degree in paleontology? So any degree in science, you should be taking as much science as you can. In particular, like, if you're going to the Bluff for high school, I know they have environmental science classes that aren't required, they're an elective. Those would be really good to take because paleontology works in with biology and environmental science a lot of the time. And just taking a wide range of classes because you never know what's helpful. Like as a biologist, I don't always expect like physics or chemistry to play too much of a role in what I'm doing, but then I'm learning about how fast penguins can move. And that has a lot to do with like drag behind them in the water, those sorts of things. So it's useful to know the physics behind that, the chemistry of how their stomach acids break down food, all those sorts of things. So having a wide range of knowledge is always super useful. Just take anything that interests you, anything that might even be somewhat related to what you're looking at. Also just get some experience and see what paleontology would be like. Go to somewhere that has fossils. Like I know there are a lot of places around Dallas that have them, and just see what paleontologists do, see what fieldwork looks like. Maybe if you can even talk to a paleontologist like at a museum or at one of those fossil sites. Colton asks, how long have you been growing out your beard? I haven't been growing it like out, like I trim it. I've more or less constantly had a beard since I was 18, I think. I shaved it once and I was very unhappy with it. I felt it looked really goofy without a beard, so I grew it out like immediately after that. But it's never been like, I'm not trying to be Gandalf, I just kind of keep it like this. Can you tell us more about the plant life there? So that's a really good question. It's something that I really have been overlooking now that you bring it up. The plant life is just as invaded as the animal life is. There are just as many invasive plants as there are invasive animals. It's just the animals are a lot easier to notice. When you see a rat or a possum attacking a bird, you know that shouldn't be there. But if you're just walking along and you see plants, you don't always think about, oh, that's invasive, that's harming the native wildlife. But it's true, and Auckland is considered to have the most invaded flora of any city in the world. And that meaning that there's over 10,000 non-native plant species in Auckland, and only 400 native plant species. And that causes a huge problem for the native wildlife. So I'm looking out my window right now, and there's a kofi right there, which is a native tree, and every other plant I see is non-native. So the plants are having just as much difficulty as the animals are. It's just not always as apparent, and the term we always use for environmental work is charismatic. Pandas are charismatic, elephants are charismatic, penguins are charismatic, a sparrow isn't that charismatic, plants aren't that charismatic. They aren't ones that draw people in and get their attention. So it sometimes is overlooked, and like you bring up, I have been overlooking it. Yeah, so the native wildlife, it's a lot more fern-based. There's tons of ferns, that's why it's the symbol of the country, or at least the symbol of the New Zealand All Blacks rugby team. And they're just everywhere. You have some really cool plants like the kofi, it's got these beautiful yellow flowers, but for the most part, when you're just walking down the street, you pretty much see British plants. All the different British plants that were brought here, many of them on purpose, some on accident. Yeah, so it's quite invaded of a flora. Bella asked, what is the real way to tell if a shark is nearby? I mean, you'd have to look if there's a fin or anything, but the point I was trying to make there, and the joke about it, is all saltwater in the world has sharks in it. It's not necessarily, within 100 feet of you, or even 500 feet, or even a mile, but every single saltwater habitat on Earth is a habitat for sharks. But shark attacks are pretty rare. There's very few species that ever attack without prompting, and very few that attack in general. So that was the point I was trying to make. I mean, if you see a fin in the water, maybe stay away from it or get out of the water, but you shouldn't be overly worried about sharks. Like, there are a lot of people that are just afraid of going into the ocean because of sharks, but that's a little ridiculous. Unless you're in a place with a lot of shark attacks, like mostly areas that have bull sharks, like Eastern Australia, that's somewhere that it would be an issue. But Corpus, there's very, very rarely shark attacks, so it's not something to be overly concerned about. Just, if you're bleeding, get out of the water. If you see a fin, maybe think about getting out of the water. McKinley asks, what is the weather like there? So it rains all the time. It's like 200, 300 days a year it rains, pretty much all the time. It doesn't get very hot. It's kind of tough to explain because you can't really relate to it until you've been here. The temperature, like the number for the temperature, doesn't get that high. Right now it's one of the hottest times it's ever been in the country because it just hit 30 degrees Celsius, which is about 83 Fahrenheit, which to you there in Texas is like 83, that's winter weather. But it feels so much hotter here because of the ozone hole. And that's not talked about much anymore because the ozone layer has been healing, and this is more like a 10 or 20 year ago issue. So it's just not really talked about. The ozone hole is healing, but the hole in the ozone layer that still exists is directly over New Zealand. And what that means is we get no protection from the sun. Everything just shoots right through, it doesn't get blocked, so you have so much more radiation. So just being in the sun, I mean, I know I'm very pale, but I get burnt in like 5 minutes, even with sunscreen on, even when it's kind of a cloudy day. You just get sunburned very fast, and it feels so much hotter than the number temperature is. But then you just step in the shade and you're cold. So it's literally just when you're in the sunlight it feels hot. And it's summer right now, so it's warmer than usual. You're in winter right now. We're in summer because the reverse seasons being in the southern hemisphere. In the winter it was pretty chilly, but not like really, really cold. It doesn't usually snow in this area or anything. What was it like visiting the beach and Volcanic Rock? Oh, it's a beautiful place. Tons of people surf there, hang out there. It's a really beautiful little town. It's got really nice cliffs that you can see, shells, like fossil shells from millions of years ago just in the cliff. It's really cool. It's a really nice little spot. The metal sand, the iron sand, that was the black sand you could see down there, it soaks up so much more heat, so you like burn your feet by walking on it. So you have to wear chanclas or flip-flops to go across that so you don't burn your feet, because it got pretty hot. But yeah, it's a beautiful little town. My mom said she absolutely loved it there. I don't know how much that was just make me feel good for bringing him out there, but it was pretty fun, yeah. Kinley asks, what do you miss most about Texas? I mean, I really like it here. I really enjoy it here. There are certainly some things I miss about Texas. I kind of miss being just like comfortably warm. Like in the winter here it's really cold, and then in the summer it's not really hot, but you don't want to go outside because like I just said about like the burning and just feeling the sun, even if it's not the temperature. It's like a more comfortable temperature, not having to fight through the accent. Like I find Kiwi accents pretty easy to understand, but every once in a while words will trip me up or something. But I really have to like pay more attention to listen, which I suppose is a good thing. But it sometimes does get burdensome, especially in loud places that I sometimes struggle to understand. Morgan said, hi. Hi, Morgan. Ashley Stotts asked, can sticker burrs get to New Zealand? So yes, they can, but they do everything they can to prevent that, because that would be an invasive species. So when you land here, you go through what's called biosecurity. So kind of like when you go to an airport, there's security, and they like check that you're not bringing in anything dangerous. They have that, as well as biosecurity, which is preventing any biological issues coming in. So that's like seeds, insects, rodents, anything like that. So you're not bringing in disease, you're not bringing in any new species or anything like that. And they're going through all your clothes, making sure there's no seeds on it, making sure you're not accidentally carrying insects or eggs or something like that. So if there were sticker burrs to be brought on someone or in their luggage or whatever, it hopefully would get picked up by biosecurity and prevented from entering, because they don't live here. There's no sticker burrs here. And funnily enough, even other places in the US there's not sticker burrs. Like whenever I had northern relatives come down to visit Corpus, the kids would be running around in the grass and just freak out because they were running around barefoot in grass, which everyone that grows up in Corpus knows you can't do that. There's sticker burrs everywhere. You can't run around in grass, that's silly. But they weren't aware of that. They're from the Northeast, they didn't really have to deal with sticker burrs. As far as I know, it's pretty much a southern US thing, or at least it's a most widespread there, as far as I'm aware. And then Trevor asked about that as well, so yeah. Andrew asked, hi Spencer, you're the best, thank you. And what is race car spelled backwards? Rack-a-car. What is your favorite thing to do there, and why is it important we follow what the penguins are doing there? So my favorite thing to do here, I mean, I like my work. Like, I absolutely love doing my work. I probably spend way more time than I should on it, just because, like, I go out and chase animals. Like, that's what I do for fun. I sign up for other people's projects all the time, even though it's not strictly part of my work. I just like going out there and doing the work. It's really fun, as well as seeing the country. It's a really beautiful country. That's why they filmed Lord of the Rings here. It's gorgeous. So just traveling around as much as I can, seeing the wildlife, seeing as much of the country as I can. And I'm hoping to get to pretty much the entire country by the end of the time that I'm here. And why is it important we follow what the penguins are doing there? So my personal belief is that wildlife anywhere should be kind of inherently valued, inherently important to people everywhere else. And I understand that's kind of a moral thing. It's not like there's a scientific reason, because penguins here have nothing to do with your life there in Texas. But I don't think that means that there has to be a reason for you to care. If you're interested in them, if you think they're cute, if you just like learning about them, as well as I think they're a really great opportunity, and this is why I'm making these videos for you guys, is so you can see what science is in real life, because they're so often shown on TV and the news and things. It's someone in a laboratory wearing a lab coat, usually glasses, by the way, I'm wearing glasses, mixing different chemicals together in a test tube. It's not what science is. Science sometimes is going out and chasing penguins. Science is sometimes like the people that brought up paleontology. It's going out and digging through sand trying to find dinosaurs. Science is, counting different plants. There's a lot of different things that science is, and it's not always, the lab work. So that's what I like showing to you guys, as well as I do Skype a scientist, which is like you go on a call with a classroom and talk to them about your research. I like to do that because often they're interested, they're penguins, as well as it's showing that science isn't always just you're going to be a doctor or working in a laboratory mixing test tubes together. So I think it's a really cool opportunity to see what the day of a scientist's life is like, as well as penguins. Why not? As for why they're important to people here that actually are in the same area as the penguins are providing a really good opportunity to understand the health of the marine ecosystem. So because they're such short-range swimmers, because they can't fly, and flying's a lot easier than swimming, so they stay pretty much within 20 kilometers of their colony, which is like 13 miles. It gives you a really good snapshot of if the penguins are doing well in this area, we know that in general the marine habitat within 13 miles of their colony is doing pretty well. If they're doing poorly, that might be because the marine ecosystem there is doing pretty poorly. So it gives us an indication of how healthy the marine ecosystem is. If they can't find food, probably humans can't find food, and there's probably a messed up environment. If they can find plenty of food and they're doing very well, the marine environment's probably good. And that's actually the way we got the funding, was telling that to the government, that we're looking at these penguins to help explain the health of the marine ecosystem, which they are very useful for that, as well as just protecting the penguins. They're not doing well here, so the more research done on them, the more that can be done to help them. Alexis K asks, Hi Alexis. What was your favorite thing you've done so far for your videos? Putting GPS trackers on penguins. You're going to see that video very shortly. But yeah, that was amazing that we were just out there for 9 days and just catching penguins the whole time, putting GPS trackers on them, getting measurements of their body, like their bill, their wing length, how much they weigh. I'm going to go into more detail in that in a video shortly, but that was the coolest thing ever. But all the work, I just enjoy all that field work. But I think the GPS trackers on penguins is certainly the favorite so far. Kerrigan asks, what was the most awesome thing you saw while you were in the field? We miss you. Miss you too, Kerrigan. I really liked hanging out with you guys and getting to talk about science just like we're doing now, but in person and with the classroom, so I really do miss working with you guys. The most awesome thing I saw, probably the first time I saw a New Zealand storm petrel. So I mentioned it a few videos ago, I think, but the New Zealand storm petrel was thought to be extinct 150 years ago, and then it was just rediscovered about 10 years ago. And we only just found the first egg ever documented 2 years ago. So it was really cool going out there, and we're on our way out to an island to do some penguin work, and we just see a workup of birds, and I start snapping pictures. And as we're leaving from that workup, I'm looking through my pictures, and I'm like, I don't recognize this bird. Is this? Oh man, that's really cool. That's a New Zealand storm petrel. That's something that was thought to be extinct for a really long time, and we just discovered isn't gone. Like 150 years. It was for like a couple years we didn't see them. 150 years. They thought they were extinct. So it was unbelievable to get to see that. As well as tucahe, which are a similar situation. They weren't thought to be extinct as long, but it was still amazing to get to see them. They're like really chubby chickens that are rainbow colored, and they're really cool and pretty and everything. But for you to see a species that you thought was gone from the earth, and it's right there in front of you, it's pretty amazing. Easton asked, Hello Easton. Have you ever surfed before? If you have, hang loose. Yeah, I surfed a little bit in Corpus. I was never too good. And then when my family visited just now, or put this video right here, I did try surfing again, but I didn't remember it too well. Yeah, I'd like to surf more, but I haven't really done it. Carly H, what's the weather like in summer in New Zealand? So I talked about that. And was the water cold? And when I surf, the water is always salty. Yeah, the water is salty. There are sharks there in Corpus. Hammerheads are pretty common, but hammerheads very rarely attack. They're kind of cowards, so I wouldn't ever worry about that. There are sharks there, but the attacks are extremely, extremely rare. Just be careful. Like if you're bleeding, get out of the water. If you see a fin, maybe think about getting out of the water, but you really don't need to worry about sharks. Sharks are extremely rare to attack people. Was the water cold? Yeah, it's pretty chilly. It's not like freezing, but it's about as cold as the water in Corpus is in the winter. Like, it's not terrible, you can still get in it, but it's not the best. Martina, where did you find that shark joke? Shaking my head. That was the instructor for a first aid course that I was required to take for field work. I know how to do first aid, but they required me to be certified in New Zealand to do field work because they don't want us going out to an island and getting injured and not knowing how to take care of ourselves. And she's a lifeguard actually at Piha at the place I filmed that last video, and there were a lot of people that had just moved to New Zealand, same situation as me, and just had to get certified while they were there. And several of them asked, how do I know where sharks are? Are there sharks at this beach? Are there sharks at this beach? And she just got tired of answering. I was like, okay, go taste the water. If it's salty, there's sharks there. And some of them like literally started walking to the beach, and she's like, oh my, this was a joke. There are sharks everywhere. That's the point. Yeah, but again, you shouldn't really be worried about sharks. Do you have a beard oil? If so, what kind? Beard oil, hydrating, cedarwood, hair. I don't really use it unless it's like a fancy occasion or whatever, and my beard has to not be caveman-y, and it needs to be like a bit straighter and cleaner. Yeah, I don't use it that often, but I have it for those sorts of occasions. Harley asks, do the surfers surf all year there? Yes, they do. A lot of people wear wetsuits even in the summer because the water is really cold. Like, the reason the water is so much warmer in Corpus is because it's shallow. The Gulf of Mexico is really shallow, so the water has a lot of exposure to the sun and stays really warm. Here, the water is much, 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 much deeper because it's an ocean. So the water isn't able to meet the sun as much and doesn't get warmed up as much. So even in the summer, it's still really cold water, and it's not that different of temperature from the winter. So a lot of people wear wetsuits whenever they're in the water. I don't have a wetsuit, so I just kind of freeze for a couple minutes until I get adjusted. But yeah, people do surf year-round just in wetsuits. Caden asked, are there any annoying laughing gulls like in Corpus? No, there aren't laughing gulls, and the gulls here are quieter. But there's still seagulls absolutely everywhere. It's red-billed gulls and blackback gulls are the two most common around here, but they're nowhere near as annoying as laughing gulls. Though the most annoying were the seagulls in Ireland. I can't remember the name of the species, but they were huge. They were like 2 or 3 times the size of a laughing gull and so much louder. So they were really annoying. It can be worse than laughing gulls, I promise you, as bad as that seems. Carson asks, why don't they just put some penguins there and ban dogs from the beach? So they did temporarily ban dogs from the beach, but there was so much public backlash to that. Everyone wanted to bring their dog to the beach. I mean, everyone likes to do that. I can't really blame you for wanting that. I just wish people were more aware of the impact their dogs have on wildlife, especially unleashed dogs, which is a really common problem here, people that don't have their dogs on a leash. So I wish people were thinking about that a bit more. But there was huge public backlash, and so they got rid of that rule. You can now have dogs on the beach again. And why don't they put penguins there? So there's not particularly a reason to put penguins there. It was just kind of, they were there. Now they're not because of one irresponsible dog owner. But there's not really a reason to put them there. There's plenty of other habitats for them to live in, and Piha would actually be a really bad habitat for them to live in. There's people there, there's dogs there because of the public backlash that got the law retracted. There's lots of rats and mice because, like everywhere in this country, there's tons of pest mammals that were brought in by humans. So Piha isn't pest-free the way some of the other places are, that are fenced off and have poisons to get rid of the pest mammals. Piha's not like that. So it would be a really bad habitat for them to live in, and there's just not a reason to. Isaac asked, why do you have a Whataburger cup? Because it's the best. It keeps my ice cold for an entire day. It's the best. What is the average water temperature? I'll Google that and put it right here, but it's pretty chilly. It's not frozen, it's not Antarctica, but it's definitely not anywhere near as warm as Corpus water. So thanks for all those questions. I'm going to be sending along another video with this one, with some really cool stuff, and I have a list of great ideas that'll be coming to you very shortly. I have a huge backlog of footage from all the field work that I was on. For literally 3 months straight, I was like never home because I was constantly out doing field work, so tons of footage from all that. Hopefully you guys get to see a lot of it.